are about at 102 currently. So I think I'll hold out until about 12:05 here. Okay, it's 12:05. So I will begin with our latest webinar, Understanding Print Job Workflow. So good morning or good afternoon to everybody out there. This is Frank Piazza, the Director of Customer Support at Pharos. And I want to welcome you to our final webinar of 2016. And I also want to thank you for attending. We held 4 training webinars this year. It was a tad less than planned, but we will strive for more next year. So in 2017, we hope to put on at least 6 in total for our webinars. But certainly, hopefully, 2015 has assisted you in your training for those that have been able to join or those that have been able to watch the webinars on our YouTube site later. We will also continue to produce short training videos, which we record and post to our YouTube site. So we have a number of those that are posted there already. They're short, in the range of anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, and they are useful topics that folks that are looking for more information would be benefited to listen to. So if you're looking for more training, please check out our content on our YouTube site or our community sites. The content's posted in the Pharos Systems YouTube site. You can go to that directly via searching in YouTube, or we have links to some of those videos in our community site as well. So I encourage you to check those out. So today we have, again, our most excellent senior engineer, Jeff Geller, who will discuss terminology, common printing problems, and print job workflow. And as always, we will record the session and post it again on the YouTube site with answers to the questions that you post in the chat window. So if you have any questions, please post those in the chat window. The plan, as usual, is to get those answered post the webinar, write them up, and distribute them on the community to all the folks out there, and as an attachment to potentially the comments section or another attachment to the YouTube site that will have this video ready to go. So certainly want to try to get to good, solid answers for everything that pops up today. If we have time to answer a few during the webinar, we will do that. That's not a problem. It depends on time. Otherwise, again, please see the recording and the transcript of the questions and answers on the community or YouTube sites. And finally, on behalf of the Pharos family, I want to thank you all for your trust in us, your willingness to discover best with us as we move into another year, unbelievably, 2017. And I'd like to wish all of you a great end to 2016 and hope you enjoy your holiday as we close out the year. So okay, let's move on to the exciting world of print. And so Jeff, I will let you take it from here. I think I covered most everything for this intro, and you can get off and running. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Frank. Hope everyone can hear me. Today's discussion is going to be around print job workflow, some common printing problems that we see and hear about, and print job workflow problems. And number one here on this list, I skipped it, sorry, is terminology, so that everybody's on the same page and has the same idea of what the same terminology means or what it means. That way, at least we're all talking apples and apples and not apples and oranges. So first, we'll just start off with terminology here. In the printing world, job submission is basically how the print job gets into the system. And that's where it comes from a client machine to the server. Job delivery is the second half of that, and that's going to be how the job gets from the server, where it's been sitting waiting to be released, to a physical printer, a physical print device in your environment. A couple other pieces of terminology here we'll talk about throughout the course of today is going to be the page counter. For all of you that don't know, the page counter is a proprietary Pharos product that is responsible for reading a spool file to determine the page level attributes of the file. For those as well, page level attributes are things that are embedded within the raw print file, such as number of pages, number of copies. Is it a color file, or is there color in the document? Is it a mono document? And things like that, simplex, duplex, and other attributes at the page level of the file. So that's what the page counter does. The last piece, will just for terminology reasons here, we'll talk about it quickly. That's the SRS. We use a lot of acronyms in computing, from EDC to ETC and all kinds of fun things. This is a Pharos acronym called, it means the Pharos Systems Secure Release Service. That's our service that's involved with our Uniprint and Blueprint products that is solely responsible for receiving the job using our custom port monitor, storing the print job on disk in a file, and then taking that disk, that file stored on disk, and actually sending it off to the print device. And that's going to be responsible for working with job submission. So the SRS will get the job when it comes in, the page counter counts it, and the SRS will then be responsible for job delivery. So that's our terminology. A couple of things that just so we all understand what submission delivery is, separate the two. In the middle there, I didn't mention it because it's really not hugely important. It's when the job is idle. A print job is idle is when it's just sitting in a file on disk somewhere, not doing anything, not going anywhere. So that's our terminology. Next, we're going to, throughout the course of today, we're going to talk about what I see a lot of and what a lot of questions come in, and we see it people who are new to the software and other people who just have similar questions. Sometimes these things can be elusive and they may not be well defined in the behavior you see, but the common ones are going to be, I was charged for my print job, but it didn't print. And I put in red here, you'll notice I put the little subcomponents that are actually responsible for this part of the problem. Another one is, and that's the job delivery component. It didn't print. That's the keyword. So we're talking about job delivery. I log in and I don't see my print jobs. Well, job submission component. That's because you logged in and they're not there yet for you for some reason or another. there's a side note to that, and we'll get through that when we talk about the details. I printed my job and was incorrectly charged. So that means submission worked, delivery worked, but somehow or other you were charged more or less, or not charged or overcharged for it. That component is going to be here, the page counter. That's responsible for determining what are the contents of your file. Is it 10 pages, 2 copies, duplex, color? At 15 cents a page, you do the math, and that's what. Or maybe you were charged $16 for that, and it was only a 2-page duplex job in 1 piece of paper mono, and it should have been 15 cents. The page counter is responsible for determining what's in the file, and then your job cost method is what's going to apply the costs. Next, I printed my job. I was charged, but it shows back up when I log in again. The key word here is I printed my job, and it didn't show back up. So that's job delivery. Uniprint will make sure that the device is ready, send the job to the device, take your money, charge you. And if there's a failure in that, we're going to talk about through these, as I'm going to go through each and every one of these individuals, then the job shows back up again. So keywords here is I printed it, I was charged, but it shows back up when I log in again. It shows up, and it says, may say free print there or something. It's not really a common printing problem, the last bullet point on this slide, but it's basically, what do I need to provide support? That would be us, Pharos Support, for help on the various problems listed above. Again, those are, I was charged, but it didn't come out. I log in, I don't see my jobs. I printed my job and was charged some huge amount incorrectly. Or I printed it, I was charged, but nothing came out and it shows back up again. So we'll go through all of these individual, talk about some points and things that are involved in all those. And lastly, what things are helpful for us to help you identify what might be one of these problems. Another set of common questions that we hear about at times, and these are just some common things. I throw these in because I think they're important to know a little bit about that. So the questions I always have people ask me are, where does the print job start? Okay, we'll talk about that. Where does the print job go? And we'll talk about that. And how does it get there? We're using carrier pigeons, we have tin can and a string, and it just flies around. How does the print job get from A to B? And we're going to talk about that too, and give you some information on how to know what's going on in your world. So we're going to jump right into our common print job problems. And these are those 4 main problems I spoke about earlier. So we'll talk about each one in detail here. So I don't see my print jobs after I log in. Well, we know it's a job submission component. So let me just go through the quick points here. The first is the reason a job might fail submission is either the job didn't make it to the server, most likely, or there's the possibility that when you're swiping your card or you're logging in with your name and password or something, that the job isn't listed under your network name, or it's not able to match your card with your name, so you see no jobs. It's a little bit different. So how do we tell that if the job actually made it to the server or not? Well, in the Pharos Administrator application, we have a nice little section called Job Management under queued jobs. And I'll throw this in. I'll fly this. I have my Uniprint server here and there. And here you can see under queued jobs, you can see the jobs that are listed for particular users. So one thing to do would be to check and make sure that the user's jobs are actually showing up here. And then when they swipe, they don't see them. So that's a different problem. Job made it to the server, but we're just not seeing that user's job. So potentially we have either a configuration of the card reader, their card is not right, their card's not in the system, the user account is not quite the way it should be in Uniprint, so they're just not seeing the jobs for Bob or Mary. Number 2 here, jobs will be dropped by the server for a handful of reasons. One prominent reason is the job comes in, bullet point number 4 here, is the job comes in as a 0-length job, or the job is using an incompatible data type, like XPS versus RAW. The data type is something that you only see in the Uniprint secure port log file when a job comes into the system. And I can show you a little bit of that too, the log file, you see what we're talking about. Jobs will be dropped by the server for a handful of reasons. If you're using Uniprint pop-ups on a queue and you have, on your print queue, you have things like pop-ups are required for the print queue, you can actually set that on the Output Management Queues section. If we go and look at one of our print queues here under Packages section, you can see I can tell the system they must use the pop-up client. And that means that when a print job arrives to the system, if it did not come with any of the header data that the pop-up client puts into the spool file, then the print service sees that and it says, I'm sorry. When this is set to yes, the print service says, I'm sorry, I'm not going to allow the job. So we can disallow jobs from client machines that do not have the pop-up client installed. So we can further control what print queue actually allows the job to make it into the system. So when things like that happen and the job isn't there, one of the things that that we like to do is to make sure that we have the we can go into the Pharos queue jobs and we can verify that we see the job for the user. If we don't see the job, often we can use what we call the Pharos alerts, and you can search for errors for that user based on the time, and you might see other things in here. There's a series of messages that you might see, but you might see some error message in there that is indicative like the pop-up client message. So number 3 here, check the Pharos Alert section in the Pharos Administrator to see if there's an error why the job may have not made it into the system. And you'll see errors like pop-ups required, or you might see unable to send cost information to user. That's because we have the cost acceptance enabled in the system. We call that notify, where you send a print job and you install the pop-up client and the user gets a message back that says your job is going to cost X amount of money, and we enable that here, informed print it's called. And you'll see an alert that says could not send cost information to users, so that's another reason why the job would get dropped. So job submission, I don't see my print jobs. A couple things, again, it can be zero-length jobs, which is a driver application conundrum. Check the Pharos alerts to see what kind of messages you have. More than likely, you'll find a simple message like unable to send cost information to user. We can begin to check why we can't do that. Can we connect from the server to the client on port 28201 that's needed for notifications? Or the user logs in and their card number is not tied to the right name, so we don't see their jobs. Let's move on to our next question. I printed my job, but the cost was wrong. Instead of the 3 pages of color file that I was trying to print 2 copies of for something, and I expected it to charge me $1.25, it miraculously took $37.65 from my account. That's not right. So we know in these cases, anytime there is a charging issue, incorrectly charged, we know that the page counter is what's responsible for understanding what's actually in the file. So then your job cost method in Uniprint is what's used to apply the cost to the job. So reasons why we have costing discrepancies is, number 1, it's tied most notably to the print driver and application used to create the raw print file. Between those 2 things and a print spooler, such as the Windows print spooler, which is what's used, we now have a print file once the spooling process is complete. And that page counter then goes over that print file and reads its values. Number 2, once the print file is created, it is up to our page counter to read through the spool file to determine the page attributes. Those are things like color, mono, collate, simplex, duplex, page size, letter, legal, ledger, A1, C9, the number of pages of copies and copies of the file to print. Then once the attributes are determined, like I said earlier, a charge is applied based on the job cost method assigned to your print group. In Uniprint, versions 8.3 and lower, the costing was assigned at a different area, but in 8.3 and above, your job cost method is now for printing is now assigned to your print group. You can see I have a number of different print groups here, and I have different job cost methods assigned to my different groups. You can see that there are job cost method per group here. One thing I'll show in the Uniprint Pharos Administrator, in some cases there's different, in every view or context here, there's different things you could add. So I could add this banner type item to my list. If I really don't want to see the job cost method, I can take it away. I can rearrange my columns so that I can see things better the way I like them. And if I wanted to put the job cost method back, I just drag and drop it like that. And I'm going to put it back over here and put my print type back over here and my description on the other side. That's kind of how I like it. So the job cost method then is what's going to apply the cost to your job. So when there's a charging issue, the first place is to send the problem file to the server again and look in the queued jobs in Uniprint. And by that, I should just keep this over here. So in the queued jobs, what you'll see is you can see exactly down here at the bottom, this is a job that is one page, 6 by 12, 792 points. Those are in points. Now I can't convert those in my head for you right away, but there's a couple of handy little online tools that can convert points to inches for you. Letter, 612 by 792 actually is 8.5 inches by 11. That's our standard US letter size paper, mono and simplex. And I see that my job is now going to cost me 10 cents. The first thing you want to do is you want to see when you send a job, does your print job show here with the correct cost? No, it doesn't. And look, it's got these really funny attributes for the print job that you're trying to troubleshoot. So in that case, that part of the problem is job submission. That's the application driver used to submit and send the job through the print spooler on the client if you're using pop-ups, and that is where the job gets created. So we look there first, and that'll be able to help us understand more about what's coming, because when it's incorrectly charged, it's already been calculated before it gets sent. So we know when it comes in is where we should look to see what is wrong with the cost of the job. It says ledger instead of legal. Maybe the client, the print queue in the client is set up differently or incorrect, or the user modified it to do something different and it's causing bad behavior that was unexpected. So that's that. And number 5 here, one of the things you can try that we always ask from Pharos Support is we sometimes produce an updated page counter when we discover things between the driver and the application are producing results we're not able to accurately detect very well. And this is available from our website. If you go out to our website, community.pharos.com, and you log in and do a search for page counter, you'll get 2 results towards the top. One is going to be a link to download the latest page counter. And just underneath the download link, there's going to be a link there to on how to install the page counter. It's a very simple installation. It does not require you to restart any of your Pharos services on a server, so a page counter can be applied during the middle of the day. Typically, you'd like to do it when it's a lull or a downtime because you're just replacing an executable, so you hate to do that while it's in use. In order to revert the change, I simply copy the original 4 files I'm going to replace and save them in a folder and put a new page counter in place, and then try to print that problematic document again. Go file print. Do the page count, do you see the same information in the queued jobs again, or do you get different results? Maybe you get accurate results. This time it shows what you want. It's 6 pages, letter, color, duplex at a cost. And now you get good results. That's good news. Also, I believe from our website and the page counter, there's some notes, there's some revision notes, so you can see what types of things have been fixed in the recent versions. If that fix doesn't work and the new page counter does not help the charging, then we want to get into capturing a copy of the spool file. So people have always asked, and we have instructions on how to do this. What we'd like to do is get a copy of the spool file from the client machine. So here's one of my client workstations. I don't have any test files at the moment, so we're going to do the typical Hello World file. And we're going to save our Hello World file. And in order to capture the spool file, I have two queues here. I have one that is using a pop-up client and one that is not. So we're going to use this one. And what we'll do is we'll pause our printing, and then we'll print to our paused printer. And what you'll see is the print job is just going to stay there. It's not going anywhere. Now we have to go find it and we'll go harvest it. So you can open up the directory. It's by default, the Windows print spooler uses C Windows System 32 spool/printers. And in here you'll see two files, the shadow file and the spool file, the actual job itself. This is a PCL driver, so I won't be able to open it and read it very well. But what we would do is we would just take these two files, copy them, save them to the desktop, and we can then either cancel the job or we can unpause our printer and the files should go away. And then you would zip these two files up, tell us what they were, the application, the print driver and version, and you could submit those to Pharos Support and say, here's a spool file, the new page counter doesn't work, it still charges for 625 pages, and here's the driver I'm using. Is there anything you can see in the spool file? And the reason we like the driver because we also like to do testing. We have a number of various devices that we can do testing with, so we can probably try to test that driver with your sample file. So not only the spool file, but if you could send us that original text file or PDF or document, or maybe it's a website someone's downloading it from, the more information, the more data we have, the more we can try to reproduce it in our system, in our environment, and see if we get the same bad results. If we don't, then it could be a configuration of the driver. Maybe we can help understand that a little bit better. And if we can reproduce the results and we do have a bug or a defect in the page counter, the driver's not working right, we send it up and we ask our development team if they can help us understand why the page counter doesn't read the spool file very well. So that's the I printed, but the job cost was wrong. Excellent. Let's move on. I was charged. I took my money, but my job didn't print. Yeah, so let's go back to our keywords here. A couple of keywords. I took my money, I was charged, but the job didn't print. So it didn't come out. If we go back to our terminology slide, we recall that not printing, not coming out is the job delivery component. You see I've highlighted that here in red for us. This means that the device, the print device, physical print device, happily accepted the print job. It took it across the network and said, yep, I got it, thank you. And the printer failed to do something productive with it, meaning couldn't render it to paper. The engine had trouble with the file or the data in it. And you get no piece of paper out with ink on it, hence no print job. Uniprint has some new settings. We've recognized that in a number of versions back that it would be helpful if we actually just put the job back into the print queue for the user. So there's a setting in Uniprint down under System Settings where you can configure the behavior of what happens when a job doesn't print, and that's under the printing section here. Print release failure action. And if you hover over it, it says action taken on system on print job release failure. So you can have a relist, you can have a hold, a relist, and a relist as free print job. And you can also change the label. So instead of having your job show back up in the queue that's got this free print in front of it, you could change this to suit your needs and free reprint if you like. You could put whatever tag you want here if you're going to do the relist as free print. If you use the relist, it'll show back up. The user will get charged. And if you hold it similarly, be held according to the reprint hold period, and reprint of the job will only be able to be done by someone who has access to the Pharos administrator or the Pharos remote, where they are allowed to manage and release print jobs from job management. So before we send a print job to a physical printer, we like to do a little sanity check. So Uniprint performs what we call the SNMP, which stands for Simple Network Management Protocol, state check before sending a job to a device. We do use SNMP V1, V2. We do not support V3 yet in Uniprint. There's a number of reasons why, but the main is that the variety of configuration around V3 and passwords and security is plentiful. So it's a huge undertaking to support V3, but at the moment. So we do the state check, and if the SNMP check comes back as successful, then we make a TCP connection to the printer, and we begin streaming the print job through that connection to the printer. The printer accepts the job. At the end of the day, we get a little response back. We get a standard TCP closure of the packets, and the connection is closed happily. And now at that point, we know nothing more except the printer received the print job, the raw print file in its entirety. So it's now, number 2, up to the printer to render the paper or render the file to paper. So number 3, at this point, there's nothing more that Uniprint knows about the print job. So sometimes you may see things like PCL XL error number something on, you print out one sheet of paper, or you see the occasional PostScript error message get printed out on the paper. And those are problems where the printer received a spool file, a print file. However, the engine had trouble with some of the commands in the file. Now keep in mind, Uniprint didn't put the commands in the file. That all comes from the print driver. During job submission, what we were talking about earlier, the driver, the application, and sometimes the content of the file can cause things to not print at the printer. So you see those, I think a lot of people have seen them, PCL XL error or something and a number, or PostScript error, show gray shadow box not supported, or something like that. And those are errors that are outside of our control. We can't change that. All we can do is recommend maybe a different application to print it with, or maybe a different driver. There could even be configuration within the driver itself that the manufacturer might be able to help with that error. Some engines only support certain versions of PCL. Some don't handle all the PCL XL stuff very well, which is PCL 6. PCL XL is actually a little bit flavorful, a little bit more of a flavor than 6, but it's similarly the same. So those are things. So once we send the job, it's now up to the printer to render the file. Number 3 here, like I said, at this point, we don't know anything else about the job. If the job doesn't print out, and sometimes it could be the device got 3 pages in and now it's out of paper, or the toner needs to be replaced. And sometimes on the device screen, you'll see a message, some type of error message or indication that there's a problem, can't print the job, or and those are the things that can help you understand why the printer didn't like the job. It's not Uniprint. Uniprint didn't create a job that the printer wouldn't like. We just moved the job through the system. That's why I call it workflow. We take it in, we see what it has, and then we send it on its way to the printer. So number 4 here, if you're unfamiliar with how to view the job log on your particular device, your best bet is to contact the manufacturer, vendor, or reseller of the hardware so they can help you. It would be nice, but unfortunately we don't have a wide variety of devices from all manufacturers and owner manuals and administrative manuals to help look up where you can find this information. However, we do have a number of different devices, and we use these devices in our own testing and so forth. So someone might be able to say, yep, if you have this Canon, I have a Canon 2020, a C2020, and if I log into the web page and I go here and I click on this, there's a job log. However, on the Canon 7065, it might be in a different place. Same with Xerox. I might know where mine is from my device, but your device might be in a different place. And that's why they'll be able to help you. And even in the device log, you may see something like some error message. And if you Google it, you might find a whole bunch of people that have already seen the problem, and they might make some recommendations as well. Because quite honestly, that's where we get a lot of our good information from when people give us these really obscure error messages. We help go out and look and see what we find, and we happily pass that information back and say this is something that might help. I can't guarantee it, but see if it does, and if it does, let us know. That way we can make a knowledge-based article out of it and hopefully share that with others later on. Because honestly, if when one person has an error message, you're not the only one. There's always other people out there in the computing world that have seen the same thing. So that's user charged, but job doesn't print. We got one more here, and this is I printed my job. I was charged, but it shows back up when I log in again. So this is kind of coupled with the it didn't print type piece. And this is, again, job delivery, the little red bullet point here. So I printed my job. It showed up to the system. I was charged, but it shows back up when I log in. The print device then must have been successful with the online state check. If the online state check, the SNMP check fails, then Uniprint will not make an attempt to connect to the printer. So it tells us two things. The state check was successful, because if it's not successful, I believe most of the cases you'll see at the print release terminal, the release station, you'll see printer is reporting an offline state. And that error message, the printer is reporting an offline state, indicates explicitly that we couldn't connect to the printer on the SNMP ports, which are UDP 161, 162, to say, hey, printer, what's your status? So if the online state check was successful, then we start to stream the print job across the network to the printer. But say, for example, the printer has a memory buffer that's full and it doesn't want to take any more data, and that process goes a period of time and still won't take any more data, then Uniprint will see the printer's not responding to the TCP packets, and it will say, okay, I guess something happened and it's not responding to me, so I'll stop. I'll call the job a failed job, and I'll put it back in the queue for the user again. I put a little link in here and can pass this around, but one of my favorite simple freeware tools is from the Paisler website, .com/tools/SNMP tester. And I'll show you that here in a second. So it shows back up when job delivery fails. If the SNMP check fails, then you'll get a message that says offline state, printer is not reporting online or something. So Uniprint connects to the print devices on either port 515, which is the standard port for the LPR protocol, or Uniprint can connect to the printer port 9100, which is the standard port for raw printing. If it can't connect to the printer, again, you'll see things in the Pharos alert section. I couldn't connect a printer, failed to connect a printer, and Uniprint will try 3 times to connect to the printer. If it fails to connect, it'll hold the job. Now you have to be careful. There's 2 pieces here. One is the SNMP check, where the printer says, yep, I'm ready on 161 or 160 on SNMP. But yet the other port that we connect to actually send the job is 515 or 9100. So it's very possible that in some environments, and we've seen this, where SNMP is allowed across, VLANs and subnets and so forth, but from the server to the physical printer through the networking of the environment, the server can't connect to the printer in 515. And a lot of times people say, well, I can ping the printer. Ping is a tool to basically verify that the network interface card, the NIC, on the endpoint you're trying to reach is alive. It sends what we call an ICMP packet. Intercommunication Messaging Protocol is what it stands for. And it just sends a packet to the NIC. The NIC receives the packet and then sends it back as a reply. Using ping doesn't necessarily indicate in any way that a device has a service listening on a port behind it, like the LPD, the line printer daemon on 515, or the printer's engine that's actually got a listener on 9100. So the SNMP can succeed, but your connection to 515 can fail. Or your connection to 515 worked and 9100 worked, and then all of a sudden something happened in the middle of sending that print job. So, excuse me, we get a network fault. The device stops responding to this connection or something else, and then we detect that as a fault and we hold the job. So that's why you'll see during, if job delivery fails, you'll see the job will show back up again. And that goes back to the settings here I was telling you about, the print release failure action. Relist as free print. This is the most common, and I believe it's the default, because you've already been charged for the job. So we don't want you to pay for it again. So we put it, and you can change this label to suit your needs so that people know it was You could even make it say not charged, free print. So that's the I printed was charged. The job shows up again. Moving on, I mentioned earlier there's some common questions that we have in the printing. And I throw these out there because it's been asked a couple of times here and there, and I think they're kind of interesting to answer and provide more substance around the print job workflow. So it talks about where does the print job start? Where does the print job go? And lastly, how does the print job get there? Well, we know, moving on, we know the print jobs always start at a client machine. In our client server world of computing, print jobs always start at most often they'll start at a client, and they'll arrive at a server with a shared print queue, and the server then the print spooler will connect to that printer on a TCP IP port, and the job goes onwards to the printer. Typical Windows shared printing, direct printing we call that. Otherwise, print jobs still start at a client, and they have a USB cable, and they're connected in their local printers. The print job pathway, this is something that we talk about a bit. When you have the pop-up client installed, so you have this pop-up client here installed, and I'll show you my client here in a moment. So the client is going to be your operating system, your workstation. The client then, with pop-ups, will use the LPR protocol, and it will LPR the print job to the print server, the Pharos Uniprint print server, which actually contains what we call the Pharos LPD service, which is it's a standard RFC LPD server. Take that print job, and it'll connect to the Windows print spooler, the shared print queue that it's destined for, and the job goes through the print spooler. Now at that point, if the client has already created for us a print-ready file, going through the print spooler is really not going to change the job. And at that point, the print spooler is processing the job. We have our SRS, the Secure Release Service. The Secure Release Service, in between those two pieces, there's what we call a port monitor. And without explaining all the details of the Windows print spooler, a port monitor is what's used to deliver a print job to an endpoint, I call it. It can be a TCP IP printer, or it can be a third-party port monitor such as ours, which engages the Secure Release Service. And then once the Secure Release Service receives the job gets stored on disk, our page counter fires up, counts it, tells the Secure Release Service what it found, and you now have that job in the Uniprint queue jobs. The print job pathway without pop-ups. The only real difference is you're just going from your client workstation using a normal Windows shared print queue to the print spooler on your server. From there on, it's going to be the same. It'll go through the port monitor at the end of the print spooler's conveyor belt, and it'll fall into the lap of the Secure Release Service, which then does its processing. How does it get there? Well, with pop-ups, the job is submitted via LPR to the Pharos LPD service. Without pop-ups, the job is submitted using standard Windows ports for shared printers, which is SMB, and then there's RPC ports as well that are used if you're using a Windows shared queue. And those are, I believe, and I have to correct me if I'm wrong, but UDP 137 and 138 and 445, and then we have TCP 139 and 445 as well. Print job workflow. So that's the typical client sending the job, the server receiving it, and the components that are involved. Now we have a new piece to Uniprint, which we didn't have in the old days, and that is that we have mobile print, and we have uploaded jobs from Print Center. So we consider these two jobs, these two types of job submission, email submission and upload submission you can see here. They're slightly different, and they're considered to be what we call mobile print jobs, whereas all of the other jobs that we've been talking about so far, we call those native jobs. They're coming in through a spooler, they're spooling, and they're getting saved by the SRS and so forth. Those are native jobs, we call them. So with email submission, the two important things that happen that are different is these jobs both get email and upload jobs both become a PDF file. So the job of email, mobile print actually connects to the IMAP mailbox, IMAP server, mail server, and it through IMAP, and it downloads the email message, checks for any attachments that may be on the email message, separates those and saves those, and then converts each one to a PDF, portable document format. Then it talks to the secure release service on a print server and says, hey, I got a file here. I need you to page count. So the secure release service then continues on the normal path, and that is it page counts it. It tries to determine the page level attributes. It's always going to be PDF. It'll always be letter. And it could be color, it could be mono, it could be simplex, it could be duplex. Well, it always, simplex and duplex are options you can change afterwards. It's just basically a simplex PDF of however many pages. The upload through the web browser in the Pharos Print Center, when you click the upload button and you select a job from your local workstation, it's going to be about the same thing, except the API gets involved first, the Pharos API, which then talks to secure release service and mobile print, says, hey guys, I have a job here that has to be converted and then stored and saved. And those three components work together to convert the file to a PDF and then send it off to a secure release service for storage, for page counting, and so it can sit and rest happily on disk until the last bullet point, delivery. So delivery for the above two methods, email and upload jobs, are the same. Up until Uniprint 9.0, Release 2, Service Pack 4, and Mobile Print 2.2. At this point, at the latest versions, the secure release service will deliver the print job to the device and not the mobile print worker service. We've separated some of that work. By that I mean the mobile print worker service used to be responsible for taking the job, pushing it through the PDL, the render queue we call that, creating a connection to the end and sending it out. So in the latest versions, a lot of that work is done by the secure release service now, and the worker service is only responsible for catching the job when it comes off of the render queue and sending it onwards to the printer. And that's pretty much the main difference between the two. So let's go to last little section here, which is going to be what data to collect when contacting support. So I have a couple of slides with some detailed information, and we'll go through that and show you where we can see some of this logs, or what logs we would use and where we get them. So job submission problems. We talk about, initially when we talked about job submission, we talked about how jobs get into Uniprint. Do you see an error message? So investigate the Pharos alerts first. Perhaps you may see a very good error message in there under the Pharos alerts that'll tell you couldn't send notification, a cost notification to user, or something like that, or pop-ups not installed. The Pharos secure port log, we'll have a quick look at that and show why job is 0 bytes or 0 page length. There's nothing we can do to change that. It's more of a driver configuration application item. You may find that the same file printed from Adobe PDF doesn't cause a problem, but the same file printed from another PDF reader, like Slim PDF reader, does cause a problem, or vice versa, using the same driver. So there's many combinations of different things. Sometimes scripts. A lot of people may have or use Uniprint scripting. Some of the more common scripts that we see and we produce and people create on their own are for what we call the print job arrive or job information. So job information is an event that happens instead of the default. Job information is something that happens instead of the default cost information. So you can come down to your server section, and if you have any Uniprint scripts installed, if you expand the server section, you'll see this little plugin section down here where you have plugins. If you click on the little box, you'll see you have a bunch of different events here. And the two that I'm talking about is the job information event and the print job arrive event. So you can add scripts to these different events. I just scroll down and select like a different test, things like that, and add a script to it. Those different scripts on those events can cause maybe the script failed, so the job's going to fail ultimately. The one way to really investigate those is going to be to go out and find your Pharos logging, which by default is in the program data. Mine is in the Pharos folder, and grab a copy of this print service log from a time frame where the problem occurred. If you can reproduce the problem, then we often recommend rolling over your log files with the log setter tool and then reproducing your problem. What that does is two things. It makes the size of the file smaller for us, so we don't have to trudge through 600,000 lines of log to find one user that it's failing for or something. And it makes it easier to isolate it. You always want to make sure that this verbosity level here is set to the max logging level. And then anytime you have a script in the system that writes these debug output lines, we will see those in the Pharos print service log. So the job information and the print job arrive events, a lot of times people have scripts on those and it starts to fail for some reason or another. So like I said, a copy of the scripts, you can do the logging like I showed and copy the print service log and say, yep, here's all of the information. When Mary or Bob sends a print job to this queue, they don't get something and I see an error and no information, nothing, and no job shows up in the queued job section. So we can look at the script, we can look at the log, and we may have to make some changes to the script, or we may have to add some additional logging to the script to see more information, perhaps, to help us understand why it's failing. Page counting problems. So let's go back really quick and look at the support, the secure port log that I was talking about, just to show you. So I don't have anything here at the moment, but I'm going to go back over to my my pop-up client, and I'm going to send a print job to the system here, and I now have a secure port log, and I just want to open this up to show you. Some of this is a little bit cryptic. I don't expect people to understand what the H ports and the P.info ports are, and some of the other stuff, but what's important here is you'll see things like start doc port and end doc port. This means the print spooler said, hey, I got something for you to do. And the end means the print spooler said, hey, I'm done. Here's the last bit of information for you. And what you'll see here in this case is it'll tell you the name of the document, and you'll see this data type. This is the data type I was referring to in the log file. The data type raw is acceptable, but we won't accept the data type XPS at the moment. Then you'll see some other information about the job. You'll see some buffer information. I won't get into that. And you'll see a final, total pages, printed, 0 pages, so forth. Job finished, sent. I have a GUID. Now, this is what Windows is reporting. Now what we're reporting, this is information that comes from the print spooler for this particular job. If I go back to my Pharos administrator and my queued jobs now, you'll see my latest Hello World job, which gave me a page count of 1 page, letter, mono, simplex. And based on the job cost method, it's going to cost me 11 cents. It's one sheet of paper, it's one page, and one copy. So you can see at times what we get back from the Windows print spooler is just negligent information, incorrect. So we use our page counter to go over that. Now, if the page counter results are less than, or if the page counter results are nothing, we will often ask the print spooler, what did you get? And if the print spooler is higher, we may take those. And there's some registry key configuration for this, because we don't like to always just use what the Windows print spooler says there are for the printer job, for the print job. So that's the job submission problems. Page counting problems, we talked about it earlier. One of the things you can do is go out to our community website, and you can Google or you can do a search for the page counter. And when you get to the page counter webpage, there's going to be, let's see, it's called Page Counter Hotfixes over here. Go to the community.pharos.com. If you can remember it, it's /docs and then this doc number. But here you can download, you can click to download the page counter. And you can see here there's a recent revision history, some things that we've gotten added over time. You see it goes pretty far back to 2014, and I think that's when we started documenting a little bit more. And then there's how to update the page counter. It's very, very simple. We have installation for Uniprint 8.3 and later, and then we have 8.2 and earlier, because they are slightly different. There's different directories involved. And then we have installation steps for those that use our Blueprint product as well. It's very, very simple to do. And make sure you just take a copy, like it says here, rename them all to backup, and then put in the new files. If you want to undo it, tells you here, just undo the, you can reverse your steps and you can undo it. Once the page counter is applied, if it doesn't fix your problem, it doesn't change the charging or the driver, or it doesn't change the charging or your costing, that's when we really need to get a copy of, like I was showing earlier, we need to get a copy of the spool file and the shadow file as well. Can't hurt, even though there's really not much in there that we do. We don't do anything with this, but it is helpful to have it with the spool file. If you can get us a copy of the original document, the hello.pdf file or text file or whatever Word document or PowerPoint, if it doesn't contain anything that's identifiable or anything like that, and you can pass it to us, that's great. We also like to know what the driver is that you're using on your print queue. On this print queue, I'm using the standard Lexmark X666DE driver. And if you know that it's version 6.3, we need to know that too. So, and if you even have a link to the website of the manufacturer where we can get it from, show us the link. We'll go download the same one that you were using, and we'll try it with the file you sent us, and we'll see what our results are. So that's what we really need when you have page counting problems, is the spool file, information about the job. Was it supposed to be 3 pages color? Was it supposed to be 3 pages duplex, 20 copies? And what did you get in the end? And we can look at that and help determine the next steps on, is it a page counter, or maybe there's something with the application configuration that we can change to do things a little bit better. Let's see. So next is the job delivery problems. So job delivery, things that we need is going to be investigate the Pharos alerts first. That's the same. That's a common theme, because I think what you'll find when you have problems or errors or things aren't working right is, and I do this a lot when I get on the phone with customers, is the first place I look is the Pharos alerts, and I see what I get. Oftentimes I find a nice error message that tells me something's not configured, or there's a script in place or something like that. So you'll see things like devices reporting in offline state. This means that the check is failing to the device. The print service log file will also have that failure listed in it. But the alert in Pharos alerts is going to actually give you that much easier than having to go trudge through some log file somewhere. So that's why we make the Pharos alerts. They take some of that logging information and they put it in real word terms and real English for people to read and understand in a simple way. If the SNMP check was good, but something happened in the middle of transmission, we won't see really what happened in the middle of transmission unless you're savvy and you can reproduce the problem. Number 3 here. If something you can reproduce on demand, then a packet capture using your favorite tool, Microsoft Network Monitor or some command line packet capturing tool or Wireshark with a UI, will help show what is happening at the lower TCP/IP level of things. You know, I'm sending a packet, I didn't get an ACK. I sent a packet, I got an ACK. I got an ACK. Oops, I'm not getting any ACKs anymore, and I'm just, now finally I just sent a reset or a fin ACK and done with it. And then we save the job because the printer didn't respond anymore. We won't really know, though, why the printer decided not to respond. We won't know what it did or anything like that. All we just see is what is on our side of the fence here when we're trying to send this data down to the device. Sometimes the device may have a message or an error log. And again, I can't tell you where those are on different devices because each manufacturer hides them differently. And on some devices, they're encrypted. I have no tools to decrypt them to look at them. So there's something here that, quickly, I just wanted to point out, someone asked a question here about direct print queues. And direct print queues, they don't work any different. In a direct print queue with Uniprint, if we go back to our terminology slide at the very beginning, we have job delivery, or we have job submission, and we have job delivery. Then we have page counting, and we have the SRS. So in a direct print scenario, when you have Uniprint queues that are direct print, everything still works the same. The only difference is that from a component perspective and our perspective is that the job doesn't stay on disk. It doesn't get saved and held there. It does get saved, and it gets held there for a very short period of time. So the job submission comes in. You'll see a bunch of events go. We'll page count it. The secure release service will store it to disk. It'll page count it. We'll figure out how much it's going to cost. It'll then do an SNMP check to the printer to see if it's alive. And then it'll make a TCP connection to the printer on the port you're using. And it'll try to stream the job to the printer right away. The print job arrive event still happens. The job information event still happens. The SNMP check still happens. So you'll see those. All those same things happen. The only difference is it doesn't sit there waiting for someone to come up and release the job. So the events that happen in the direct print are the same. Job delivery problems are the same. We fail. The job comes in quite happily, honky-dory, and then all of a sudden trying to connect to the printer, we can't get an SNMP response from the printer. So the job fails. So all the same problems you find in a held print queue scenario are going to be the same that you would find in a direct print queue scenario for the most part. Yep, no difference. Job submission, problems, page counting, incorrect charging, things like that. I sent it, the little dialogue says it's going to be this, and oh my goodness, $67. No, it's one page. Or on the flip side is students probably and users probably will not tell you when it was supposed to be $3.50 when they got it for free. So that's it for what data to collect and how to get it to us. I showed you the secure port log. I wanted to show you that. Some of the error messages you'll see as well, if you notice in my Uniprint. Here's where I couldn't connect to the printer. So the error message I see is retrying 1 of 1 to release the job to this printer at that IP address, 1013.208. They see a failed to render print job error message. This one is failed to render print job. The render server does not have an available print queue that uses the Microsoft PCL class driver. Unfortunately, we don't work with class drivers. Those are, in the Microsoft world, those are called Type 4 print drivers. We use Type 3 print drivers. It's not something that we can fix. but Microsoft made a change to the way that their print driver structure is. And when with Type 4 print drivers, Microsoft no longer allows that print driver to be used with a port monitor that is a third-party port monitor, which is what we are. We install our port, and on your Uniprint server, you'll have this Pharos System Secure Release port. So with a Type 4 print driver, such as any of these class drivers with class in the name, we won't be able to use them with our, I don't see the column, you won't be able to use it with a Uniprint secured print queue in any way, shape, or form. Some other error messages. Here we go. Here's one I have. Error releasing job. A print job was aborted. Don't know why, but it showed back up in my queue for me. Error releasing job. The LPR command received a negative ACK from the LPD server, and that's a printer's IP address on that port. Now, I don't know why the printer responded or didn't respond, but because we couldn't connect to it and get a TCP connection to the printer on that port, 515, we didn't send the job to it. And you notice the operation is release job. This is our job delivery thing that we've been talking about. Could not connect to the printer because my printer didn't respond to the connection. I don't know. And we won't know why the printer didn't respond to the connection. That's not something we can tell from our perspective. Wireshark will probably see the packet going to the printer and nothing coming back. So you can see there's a flavor of, I have a bunch of flavors of error messages in my log. Sometimes people turn printers off that I'm testing with and I don't realize it, and I get those connection errors and other things like that. So anyhow, that covers pretty much, I think, the main topics for today, which are to the print job submission, print job delivery, where to look and see, understanding the workflow, what's involved, the components, terminology, things we use, areas to look for problems for it, some of our basic questions. And side of the last slide, which is question and answers. Just want to go back to the main set of common questions here. Kind of recap, I was charged, but my job didn't print, so this is going to be a delivery. I log in and don't see my job. It's either submission or your card doesn't match your name or something like that. I printed and wasn't charged. I was incorrectly charged. Well, we have print job and driver creating a spool file that we read. Our page counter does that. I printed, it was charged, it took my money, but it shows back up again. Or it doesn't show back up at all. Never came out. That's a delivery component. And we talked about that if it doesn't come out at all and it doesn't show back up when you log in, then that means the job took it and consumed it, but didn't do anything with it. So that concludes my slideshow for today. And as Frank said, that this will be recorded and it'll be out in the community. And Frank, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Great job. We've gotten a lot of good questions that have come in. Some of those we've been answering as you've been talking. Thanks to Rich Post, who's been acting as a panelist and providing some information there. Some of those answers will probably be scrubbed a little bit more, and if we can add more detail, we will do that. So these will be posted out on the YouTube site with the recording and also on the community site. So you shouldn't have a problem finding both the presentation recording and the answers to the various questions that were posted here. And then I would encourage you to continue to ask any questions that might pop up in the comment section, forum sections around the posting of the training video, this recording. So hopefully this has been helpful, and again, want to continue to keep the discussion going and really drive home what the facts are around the product and what Jeff was presenting. So certainly not a problem answering more questions. wanted to, again, remind you of the short videos. Check out the YouTube site. We posted a couple recently on mobile print and a couple other topics. So those are short 15, actually anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes long. And I think that's it at the moment. Hopefully everybody got something out of it. Again, I wish you happy holidays and a great close to 2016. And be looking for our next webinar, hopefully by the end of January or mid-February is what I would expect. So I'll go ahead and end the recording, and we'll get this posted soon. And have a great day, everybody. Thank you.